Good morning, sir, says Mr. Piyush Sethi. Good morning, Mr. Sethi. Good morning. Can you hear me? Should we begin? Should we begin the show that we deserve, right? The show that we deserve. I think we deserve it. It's so good. It's so good that we can't take a break. We cannot take a break, folks. If you can hear me, let's begin. You are audible. Beautiful. Bum bum bum. Bum bum bum. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Bum bum bum. Bum 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 bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We're having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We are working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things couldn't get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go. But before we go, you gotta follow a tradition, right? You know the tradition. You know the sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together and it'll bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail, every day. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup or mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice, a stein, a canteen jug, a flask, or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. I like some hot water, but today I don't have black pepper in. There's some sort of weird blue anti-inflammatory drink. I don't know what it is. It's my brother's, but it's blue. It looks like blue water. Very interesting. Let's do it. Nice. Very nice. It's kind of a flour or something which they've put in water, and it has a perfect kind of a feel to it. Nice feel. Mr. Ashutosh Bhandekar says, "Great range of clothes, sir." Great range of. I've never bought an article of clothing ever in my life. I have not bought an article of clothing. One single piece of clothing, I have not bought it. It's all gifted, so all compliments go to whoever has gifted me all the clothes. So anyway, folks, reminding, I have to give credit to some people, right? Mr. Sumant Kumar Mongolori, I guess I'm pronouncing the name right. I hopefully am. He was one of the first patrons to support Thinker's Frequency. He donated some $5,000 for the vision that we talked about, the whole TV thing, and then having an intern to cut out the shots and stuff. Then Mr. Barun Sharma came forward yesterday, a small donation, $500. Then Mr. Supreet came along, $100. Amounts don't matter, gestures do. But we have a target of raising 10K till tomorrow. Today's 30th, tomorrow is 31st. 10K for this, right? So let's get us rolling on that regard. I'm gonna put it out there, the link in the comments section, so that you can take it forward, right? I'm gonna invest some part of it myself for the StreamYard thing, as I said, right? The rest can come from the viewers, and we can have the show that we deserve running on. Otherwise, it might not be sustainable. Anyway, moving on, folks. Great news. Nvidia is now a $5 trillion company. Nvidia is now a $5 trillion company. So, a few months ago, it had become a $4 trillion company. Apparently, that wasn't enough. It has risen about 25% from that mark, and now it's a $5 trillion economy. Now, what does it say about Mr. Peter Thiel's thesis, or let's say reading of the situation? We've talked about this. We've talked about how Mr. Peter Thiel said Nvidia's position in the market is temporary. He said that Nvidia's monopoly essentially in the AI play might not be permanent, right? So, what do you think about Mr. Peter Thiel's thesis on that regard? So, his line of thought was that whatever Nvidia is doing right now, it is it will someday be caught up by other people in the fray, and as it does, Nvidia will lose its luster. That's what he said when it was a $3 trillion company. So Nvidia was the first company to hit 3 trillion, then 4 trillion, then 5 trillion, right? And since then, uh, since that prediction came out a couple of years ago, I guess, 1.5 years ago, Nvidia has only grown from strength to strength. So, what does it say about Mr. Peter Thiel's uh, prediction, so to speak? There are no signs of slowing down of Nvidia at the moment, right? Whoever is in the fray, like AMD, Intel, everybody else, essentially, they are way, way back in the line, right? Google has also tried doing its own thing. It's also a very, very niche player. Nvidia is the bedrock upon which the whole AI revolution is being run. It is so strong that it has made about 90% of all profits in AI since its beginning. And now it's basically investing in companies which are essentially its customers. So leading to a cyclical transaction, right? Seven companies in US are just, that's basically US economy's growth right now. So what does it say about Mr. Peter Thiel's prediction is a question. Uh, However, when we are analyzing Mr. Peter Thiel's predictions and thesis, we also have to take in account that this is all transpiring in the span of a couple of years, right? Maybe 4 or 5 years. Sometimes it takes time for things to actually materialize, right? When competition is inching closer, or let's say when competition starts making progress, it takes time for them to catch up to a giant like Nvidia and the protections that it has created around its business. For now, Mr. Peter Thiel has clearly lost a lot of money, right? By betting against Nvidia, essentially. Even philosophically, I'm not talking about any capital position, but it didn't turn out as well. So a lot of people said that Nvidia's CUDA architecture, and Nvidia is not just a, you know, hardware product. It has a lot going on for it, which is right. But Mr. Thiel was of the view that all of those things will someday, so his words, and I'm paraphrasing, are that manufacturing essentially becomes a commodity sooner or later as soon as the software companies start pulling in that domain. So that sounded very astute, right? And this is Mr. Peter Thiel. He's never been wrong. So I'm not a person of for authority bias. I'm against authority bias. But I listen to his arguments closely because they reveal some sort of philosophical thought aspect to them, right? They are very, very holistic in their view. So that hasn't panned out yet. Now, does that mean that that can't pan out in the future as well? What about Chinese developments in the AI play, right? China, there was a news from China a month ago or a couple of weeks ago where they said that they've created a chip which essentially beats Nvidia in many parameters, right? Now, nobody knows if that pilot project or if that prototype will reach production stage or has the potential to actually make a dent in the industry. However, what if something comes out of the blue, like DeepSeek came in the software play? What if something comes out in the hardware play, right? Will then Mr. Peter Thiel will be right and all at once? Maybe, maybe. For now, he's clearly not made a good trade, right? Essentially. So the stock has like tripled in a very, very short duration of time. So if I look at Nvidia stock and I take a 5 year view, it's 1,500 times. So it was $12 in 2020, $12, and now it's $207. Oh my God. It was $12. Now it's $207. Well, that is not normal. Anyway, uh, speaking of Nvidia, US is meeting China, of course. US is also, Mr. Trump is also talking about Mr. Modi and saying that we are getting a trade deal done with Mr. Modi. So that is very interesting. Let's see what happens in that regard. He's obviously gotten a lot of money and traction in Asia. So his deal with South Korea has really, it looks like a pretty solid deal. About $350 billion in investment, right? 200 billion and then 150 billion in a different way. 50-50 stock profit split, right? Support for US shipbuilding. So South Korea is a shipbuilding giant, right? And what US wants to do is make American shipbuilding great again. So they are saying that South Korea will be aiding the renewed interest of US in shipbuilding. So it will help rebuild America's shipbuilding might, right? So it's a good deal. It's a good deal. He got a great deal from Japan, about $500 billion as pledged, right? So a lot of money flowing into US by these trade deals, which have been very successful. So it's to be seen what kind of trade deal India does with US. Is India also going to pledge a lot of money to US for its in while it invests in US? That will be funny. If money starts flowing in from India to US in investments, right? That will be hilarious. But don't count that out. Don't count that out, right? India might have to do something in order to make sure that it keeps getting the American market access. Well, that out of the way, let's begin with Swiggy. So, Swiggy is mulling an additional $1.5 billion QIP to its cards, qualified institutional placements. We've talked about how Swiggy is trying to raise money. Swiggy is not in a good place right now. It has problems, it has a lot of problems, right? First of all, it's overwhelming competition which is coming from all places, every place, right? And then there's a lack of capital adequacy. I mean, there is capital adequacy inadequacy, and of course, the operations, the market share loss, the market share erosion is a huge problem for Swiggy, and it's leading. It earlier it was looking at a $1 billion raise, but now it's looking at a $1.5 billion raise, and with this $1.5 billion raise, it'll be able to do. Uh, it'll be able to have majority shareholding in domestic investors. So why do you think it's doing that? Now, viewers of Thinkers Frequency obviously know that we discussed it, right? Why is Swiggy interested in raising $1.5 billion instead of one? So that its domestic investor base might go into a majority numerically. Why do you think that is? We've talked about this, folks. This sort of tastes weird. Anyway, yeah, can anybody answer? We've talked about this. Swiggy was initially looking at raising $1 billion, right? Now it's looking at $1 billion. Uh, in addition, right? So with this, its domestic investor base is gonna go into a majority. Why do you think that is important? This is in continuation to something very important that we discussed lately. No? Nobody? Really? It was a very simple thing. We've talked about this in pretty solid detail. I'm sorry about my hair today. No? Okay. They can come with IPO in our stock market. No, they're already a public company. So Swiggy is a public company already. Oh, this is surprising. But the answer is that for Instamart, right, domestic shareholding majority is very important for them to switch into an inventory led marketplace model. So right now they're a marketplace essentially. If they want to have an inventory led play like Zomato, right, like Eternal right now, they'll have to have a majority shareholding according to the regulation of domestic people, right? Domestic base has to be majority, and they don't have that. And if they can get that, they'll be able to quickly switch to an inventory led model, which will hopefully make their operations easier, less complicated, and there's gonna be more capital freedom for them. So that's the play. That's why Swiggy is looking at raising more than it was using earlier, right? I believe Swiggy has a lot of troubles in the future, right? Swiggy is going to be a casualty of rising competition in uh, quick commerce. That's my prediction. Now, why am I predicting that? Because the company has lost on a lot of things, right? It went with the super app strategy, which was a mistake. Then it has been basically losing ground to Eternal. And while it loses ground to Eternal, its cash position is also not that solid. Not that solid at all, right? So it has about 5,300 crores in the bank. It is raising money by selling stake in Rapido for nothing, essentially 2,500 crores, right? So its cash position is not that great. Its profitability profile is very very bad, so it's losing money quite quickly, right? So it's gonna be in a much worse position, like a few months down the line, a few quarters down the line, I think. And then when the competition rises extraordinarily, which will right, definitely because of Reliance, because of everybody who's stepping in, even Tata not giving up on Big Basket, you're gonna see these people losing ground. So Eternal seems to be in a very solid play. Zepto has its own problems, so nobody can talk about Zepto, where it goes, because it has been able to raise money extraordinarily, even though its operations are much worse than Swiggy. So Swiggy has a better, let's say, net promoter score. Dark practices have been pioneered by Zepto, essentially, not Swiggy. So in that way, Swiggy has some good news coming in, but when it comes to quick commerce, it's really losing a lot of ground. So first, it might just be one of the first few people to lose wickets, unfortunately. That's how I'm seeing this situation evolve. Moving on, folks. State discoms have a lot of debt, and there is a scheme to rewire their capex support by the government. That's very important. Moving on. A lot of action going on in the defense play. India has gotten approval for the Chabar port of Iran. We've talked about this. Uh, India wanted, right, US sanctions waiver on the Iranian port, Chabar port, because it's very critical for the trade operations. Well, that is happening. That's happening finally. It's nice. Uh, so this is one of the good news, the geopolitical good news. And when it comes to India-US conversations, it signals that there might just be more good news. Because of this good news, not just for the Chabar port, but because of the US India conversations, what people are hearing is that the tariff situation might lead to a reversal of sorts, and that is leading to India's stock market really kicking it, right? So there is a rally which is happening, and it's one of the signals that there might just be some good news in the fray, right? It's awesome whatever is happening in that area. Moving on, folks. Speaking of geopolitics, India has taken away, has withdrawn from the Tajikistan port, right, airport. Essentially, it's given away that position. There were some. It was a logistical base more than anything, right? The airbase, but it's now, since India and Afghanistan are really warming up in a lot of ways, if you know what I mean. It's basically given that up. It was important when Northern Alliance existed, but now Afghanistan has totally been taken over by Taliban, so it doesn't make sense, right? It's one of those things that lead to uh, geopolitical developments and trade. Eased pilot duty norms to ensure operational stability while also ensuring safety comes out. DGCA. So yesterday we discussed, did DGCA just trade off safety for better ops or for better capital efficiency, right? That was a question we talked about. So this is a developing story because of the Air India crash. AI crash wordplay. Air India crash. There was a lot of talk about how these things might just be needing a reform, right? So DGCA was looking at everything. One of the things it found was pilot safety because of fatigue issues, fatigue norms, right? So they are supposed to have some sort of rest durations, and those rest durations were essentially getting fiddled with, or they were far too few, leading to fatigue issues with pilot, which sort of led to safety risks for passengers, right? Now, that is a trade off because if you give a lot of rest to pilots, you will essentially, you know, end up spending a lot of money because, you'll have more pilots. You'll need to have more pilots to keep the flights running, and so on and so on and so on. So DGCA essentially said, what first came out with the rule that you have to have this much of rest period. There was a midnight norm. There was this whole, midnight hour rest and so on and so forth. Uh, then they relaxed it. So everybody's criticism was that, hey, did you just trade off safety, man? Right? Did you just do that? To which they came out, right? They apparently heard us. They watched Thinkers Frequency as well. They said, no, we didn't. It's just operational stability while taking care of safety. Obviously, that's what they'll say. But we need more good news on this regard, right? More good news. Speaking of good news, folks, L&T's numbers came out. L&T's numbers are good. They're pretty good. Profit numbers up by 16%. 16% overseas orders up. L&T is looking at a lot of things, right? It's looking at a lot of overseas business. We also talked about how L&T is thinking about venturing into the ECMS play, electronics component manufacturing play, right? Which will be a big overture for a company of L&T size. It's huge if you don't know about it. It's India's largest EPC player, engineering, procurement and manufacturing player. So that essentially is a very good news. And Mr. Amitabh Kant, who was the chief of Niti Aayog, he has joined as an independent director. Now, I have a question, folks. It's just a question, okay? Should the bureaucrats be allowed to take up positions in private companies which they were effectively monitoring or regulating when they were in the government? Is it a conflict of interest kind of a situation? What do you think? I'll say it again. I was a bureaucrat. It was my job to get the best out of these people. I was the watchdog for these engineering, procurement, and construction companies. As I retired from my government service, should it be allowed for me to take up a job in these companies as I do that? This is analogous to what happens in US, where career politicians have, take up jobs in defense companies after playing their tune while they were in service. So you understand, I'm not implying that there's a conflict of interest in the case of Mr. Amitabh Kant. I'm not casting any aspersions on his character, on his, professional legacy. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying, is it a conflict of interest that you were supposed to be a watchdog for these people? You were supposed to be the, monitoring person of these companies, and then when you have your faithful service over, right, you get a job with those very companies? That sounds very, very fishy. There should be a norm against that. Some comments. Mr. Abhishek Sharma says, indeed. Mr. Tushar Tiwari says, conflict of interest 100%. And Mr. Abhishek Sharma says, the job might be a result of a favor. Exactly. So that is exactly what has happened in US a lot. That a lot of those people essentially started getting jobs in those very companies for as a result of all the shilling that they did for them while they were in government service, right? And then people said, and Liz Cheney was amongst the people. So Dick Cheney's daughter, she did that, right? So she was really castigated by Mr. Vivek Ramaswamy on the debate stage, if you follow US politics, and that was awesome. But that highlighted an important part. I was a career bureaucrat. I helped these companies, or I monitored these companies. It was my job that these companies didn't loot anything, or it was my job to essentially get these companies the contracts. And then when my job got over, I got the gift, so to speak. Anyway, moving on. That is an important question, of course. Mittal HPCL joint venture, HPCL Hindustan Petrol, of course, uh, halts Russian oil purchases after fresh sanctions. So we've talked about this. 1st August. That's when things are gonna step up. So these refiners have stopped taking Russian oil purchases, right? Refiner says that it will follow due diligence norms. Can't verify FT report on sanctioned vessels. So a lot of action going on with Russia. Is anything of this in this direction going to actually result in some, you know, pullback of Russia from the war? It doesn't seem likely. Russia came out with its news with the news that it's tested a nuke. So they basically are coming out with their own news in that department, and it's not pretty. So nobody knows how much India's refineries stopping Russian oil purchase is gonna help the war situation, but it's definitely helping the US optics, right? Like, hey, we made this happen. Anyway, Nissan CEO Ivan Espinosa drives global overhaul, bets big on India. This is also a developing story, folks. If you know about Nissan, Nissan is a company that was wanting to get acquired by Honda. Nissan and Honda were supposed to merge. There were a lot of problems with Nissan. Nissan is, of course, there are a lot of problems with automotive industry in general, right? Uh, Companies from Europe, companies from America, companies from Japan as well. So Nissan is a Japanese casualty of whatever is going on, and it essentially wanted a merger with Honda, which failed, and which essentially led to its own path, right? When it came to survival. Now Nissan is looking big on India, so it's doing a lot of cost cutting measures from 17 production units to 10 and so on and so forth. So it has a lot of ideas to cut costs, but one place where it's going to go heavy is India. Well, that makes obvious sense because whatever growth, they can't compete in the European market. Of course, China has it covered. The only market where China's presence is sort of limited is India, and there's also scope for India to improve, as Mr. Nitin Gadkari says, factually incorrectly. But India might just be world's largest automotive player in 5 years. That's a bit hilarious, but he says that and recurrently. So there is a lot of room to grow the Indian automotive play, and Nissan is betting on it. New model launches and so on and so forth. Right. Speaking of Indian automotive sector, uh, Mr. The representative of Suzuki has spoken out, and he said that we're very thankful for the government to essentially have come out with the policy supporting small cars demand. Now, this, by the way, was a contention. So while this was getting played out, you remember, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember, old viewers of Thinkers Frequency, when we were predicting how the government might just take the Suzuki situation, the Maruti situation, right? So the what was the bone of contention was cafe norms, right? Corporate average fuel efficiency norms, and cafe norms were very anti small car company, right? And in one of the episodes, I had said that it seems like the government is gonna let Maruti fend for itself when it comes to cafe norms, right? And then I read about it in detail, and the next day I came forward that no, I think the cascading effects, the second order effects of letting Maruti fend for itself, so to speak, will be pretty bad for India, and government will essentially come and save uh, Maruti in different ways. And that's when India came out with its own GST rationalization play, which made it very, very cheap for very, very, green for the small car companies and small cars in general, right? So all business outcomes are the result of political will. And today, the political will essentially chose to support the small car industry, the small car paraphernalia. How long will that last? Well, nobody knows. Nobody knows. Because effectively, even in China, even in India, a lot of demand that is coming in from the middle of the pyramid, or let's say top of the pyramid, right? 66% of all cars sold in India are being SUVs. That says something, right? That says something. Moving on, folks. India's telecom. There's a good news coming in from the telecom sector. Telecom manufacturing bets on design and AI. Well, focus on chip design, R&D, local IP-based products to boost exports, cut import risks. So at this moment, telecom equipment is basically imported, right? We don't have much telecom equipment manufacturing in India. In fact, in a lot of ways, we are dependent on places like China for something as critical as telecom. Mr. Abhishek Sharma seems to have a question. Apart from employment, how does India benefit from supporting Maruti Suzuki given it's not entirely Indian as it has majority shares of Suzuki? Okay, so Mr. Sharma's question is apart from employment, supporting Tata Mahindra makes more sense in this regard. Okay, so well, if you cut out employment, because employment is essentially a big part of the. So Maruti is not just one company, right? When Maruti sells a car, there's a whole OEM small business ecosystem that is supported by Maruti, right? And if small cars start selling, Maruti sort of loses out, but so do all the small car OEMs that depend on Maruti. Okay, so that is the first cascading effect, the first second order effect, which comes out of small cars not selling, right? Small cars, if not selling, and especially Maruti, if it's not selling, the whole OEM ecosystem which is surrounding Maruti, which is essentially very, very huge and leads to a lot of value, it sort of comes down. Secondly, small cars make of the bulk of all car manufacturing in the country. So all the bulk comes from cars, right? Uh, all the bulk comes from the small cars. Value comes from the big cars, bulk comes from the small cars. And if the bulk goes away, right? A lot of manufacturing volume goes away. If manufacturing volume goes away, a lot of, things stop moving in that direction, because volume is also very important. Of course, you're going high end, that is important, but volume becomes very important when it comes to logistics, right? So if, let's say, you're making small cars and suddenly small cars stop selling, right? And which leads to lower volumes in the market. What does lower volumes mean? It means that logistics will also suffer as an industry. Freight forwarding will also suffer as an industry. If logistics and freight forwarding and all of those people also start suffering, right, that goes out of the way. Then smart cars, since they were making all the volume, right, sales volume go down. That means the dealerships, the retail outlet players, they'll also go down in the context. So you're looking at not just one company, right? You're looking at an entire ecosystem which will, if dealerships start going down, you can imagine, that leads to another chain of events which will frankly be a little hard to formulate right now, or let's say articulate right now, because you understand, Mr. Sharma, small cars, volume, OEMs, logistics, uh, the dealerships, and so on and so on. So it'll be make sense, very well explained. Well, thank you. Some of the OEMs listed are Minda and Motherson Sumi. A lot of them, a lot of them, a lot of them, says Mr. Manjunath. So that's what happens. We need the volumes and the value. The answer is never just value, right? That's what US thought when the McKinsey type sold itself out, right? That this is just volume purchases, right? Low end manufacturing, let it go. Let it go. Let the low end manufacturing go. This is just volume purchase. We don't need to do this shit. We'll go up the chain. We'll go up the chain. We'll go design. We'll go high end, right? Let China do all of that, right? That is a very, very big mistake, and we don't want to do that. So we need volume and we need value. That's how things get made. Moving on, folks. So we were talking about telecom. So we are heavily reliant on telecom imports when it comes to equipment manufacturing, right? We don't have much of that, but telcos are setting up their game in that regard. What's changing? From assembly to design, firms investing in chip design, AI-led R&D and local IP. To value creation, not volume. Again, so this is now going towards value. How much value can you add into the system, right? Speaking of telcos, they are also, this was telecom, right? Telecom players. Telecom is telecommunications, guys. Telcos, the manufacturing equipment like Nokia and those kind of people. Telcos are beginning with the caller ID play, right? Caller ID trials. So that essentially means Truecaller goes out of business, I guess, right? Or maybe they need to tie up with Truecaller or something of that sort. But yeah, their pilot is going out, nationwide rollout by March. So telcos will be doing the caller ID essentially, and you know, also they basically be making money because this mobile verification platform they're also creating. So it's not just caller ID; they're going deep into the whole uh, user identification mechanism, right? So that's also going to be a revenue churner for the telco players. Good news for Bharti, good news for these people, right? Speaking of good news, Havells has led 1,500 crores, 1,400 crores in Goldie Solar. Goldie Solar is a solar panel manufacturer player, module manufacturer, right? Havells is getting into that play. Havells, as you know, is a great. I have quoted that book a lot. The Untold Story of Kimat Rai Gupta, the biography of Mr. Kimat Rai Gupta, founder of Havells, rest in peace, right? Written by his son, Mr. Anil Rai Gupta. Great book, great book, right? So they are fans, they're into ACs now. The Lloyd's brand they've started. They're into lights, they're into switchboards, and so on and so forth. Wires that don't catch fire, Havells, right? So they are investing in solar as well. They are really heavy. I am bullish on Havells. Yet their stock hasn't really moved for a very long time, right? But it's already a $12 billion company, so maybe there's no room for growth, but they are trying. But they're trying. Let's move on, folks. India's installed power capacity exceeds 500 gigawatts, right? So India had a target of having renewable energy more than 50%, right? By 2030, it already did that in 2025. So a lot of action when it comes to solar, when it comes to wind, and so on and so forth. If you're interested in numbers, I'll give you a number. 51% is renewables. Solar is 127 gigawatts. Wind is 53 gigawatts, and non-fossil fuel 5.1 of thermal capacity. So thermal capacity is added 5.1 gigawatts. So a lot of action as far as I don't like wind energy, to be honest. I think wind energy is a mistake. They kill all the birds, and the real estate goes to the toilet when it comes to wind farms, right? Whenever there is a windmill somewhere, the real estate essentially gets screwed, and then it also is not good for ecological balance. So I hate winds, and also it is not as reliable, and all the parts that go into wind manufacturing are coming from China. So I don't like wind at all, right? But India has chosen to invest a lot in wind as well, which is a mistake. Which is a mistake, by the way. Moving on, folks. And you know who caught the wind problem first? It was a political figure, of course, very controversial, very controversial. It was Donald Trump. He said it kills all the birds. It kills all the birds, and it was amazing. And also in the terrain, especially the US terrain, it definitely doesn't work because of the whole Texas thing. They have winters. The wind farms get jammed during the Texas winters, and so on and so forth. So that is again a problem in that area. Moving on. What's happening with my head today? Anyway. A lot of time where it goes when I'm setting my camera up for Thinker's Frequency, it's just to make sure that I'm not looking like an idiot. I'm so conscious about this. Anyway, revised ethics to there's a question. Nishant, any way to connect with you? Wanted to speak about something, says Mr. Weber Manocha. Sure, I mean, you could message me on LinkedIn. We could connect. I had a very nice meeting with a viewer of Thinker's Frequency last night. And he's based out of Mumbai. And he was in Delhi and we met. It was really nice. uh, Mr. Aditya Bilhi, right? It was lovely meeting him. Anyway, folks, uh, move on. Index has hit 13-month high. We've talked about that. Divided Fed cuts rate by 25 BPS sets end to balance sheet runoff. So Fed rate is going on, right? Fed rate cut. We've talked about that. Uh, Donald Trump literally abused Jeremy Powell, the Fed chair. He called him a moron. He called him a stupid person. He said he gave him a nickname called Too Late Powell, right? Because he wasn't cutting the rates. Now the US economy is in a very complicated situation, right? At one end, you are seeing a lot of layoffs happening. Amazon laid people off, and then there are other people. General Motors is laying people off. Then there's Skydance, which is laying people off. Skydance is, of course, David Ellison's company, which is looking at merging with Paramount. We've talked about this, right? They want to acquire Paramount. So a lot of layoffs are happening. A lot of people are saying AI, these are AI-led job losses, and jury's out on that. But point is, inflation is not that high. Economic growth, except for data centers and AI, is not happening, right? Jobs are starting to look bleak all of a sudden, and it seems like Mr. Trump was right all along. There should have been a rate cut well in advance. It seems like Too Late Powell was indeed the right way to characterize Jeremy Powell, but finally they've come out with a rate cut, which is exactly why you saw so much of growth happening when it came to US stocks, gold going down, and so on and so forth. People believe that the world is going to be back in a growth path. So, if it's going to be back in a growth path, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Moving on. So, RBI forex strategy more effective than IMF model, right? Says Deputy Governor Ms. Poonam Gupta. Ms. Poonam Gupta says that IMF believes that emerging market should not interfere with the currency volatility at all. She believes that that's not the right way to go, right? Volatility curbing by RBI has proved to be a good policy. And she says the literature around the emerging markets not intervening as far as volatility, currency volatility has proved the literature around it is not positive on that regard. She has very, very good rationales about why RBI has been successfully doing whatever it's trying to do when it comes to rupee stabilization, so to speak, right? We are growing at a very well with 6.5, and our forecast is 6.8, but that's not India's destination. That's not our potential. That's not our aspiration. So she's talking a lot about that. A comment. Mr. Piyush Sethi says, became a patron today and did my bit. Hope this continues and grows into something huge super soon. Well, that's so sweet of you, Mr. Sethi. That's very, very nice of you. It's because of you, Mr. Sumant Kumar, Mr. Barun Sharma, Mr. Supreet, all of these people who have become patrons and people who will become patrons. I'm very positive that this is going to continue, right? And this is a very good routine. More than the knowledge that we gain, it's a good routine to get such a heavy dose in the morning, and then you move on and move through the day, and you are very well informed, and you also have a lot of mental modeling done, right? Just as we talked about Maruti's second order effects in that way, these kinds of thinking models, they really help a lot, right? Moving on, folks. So she's basically talking about central bank strategy, which has been working well. Speaking of central bank strategy, folks, RBI is looking at quickening the cross-border remittances. Now, do you know about cross-border remittances, folks? Cross-border remittances are a huge source of earning for India. India makes a lot of money on remittances. India gets about $120 billion a year on remittances by Indian nationals abroad, right? So $120 billion. So that's the plus of Indians basically going out of India. Whenever $150 billion, says Mr. Sumant Kumar. Oh, it's crossed 150? Are you sure? I read $120 billion last time. Total remittances to India. India received approximately 120 to 135 in 2023, 2024. 2025, so it was 125 in 2023, definitely. 2025 is still on, so 2023 2024 number was 120, around 120. It might just become 150 in 2020, this particular year. I guess that's what you meant. Well, in that case, it's awesome. So 150 billion dollars. So what they're trying to do is making it quicker. Right now it takes a lot of time, so some numbers if you want to know, right? Currently, less than 8 to 10% of inward remittances in India are credited to beneficiaries within an hour, compared to about 75% in US, even though 90% of all cross-border transfers are happening through SWIFT. So just 8 to 10 are completed in an hour. 75%, on the other hand, are completed in an hour in the US. So that's what they're trying to quicken. Velocity of money is always a good news. There is nothing wrong with quickening flow of money. Indian IPO market exceptionally strong, stays cities Raghavan. Well, if of course, right? Our IPOs are looking like a sure bet, and everybody's gonna be laughing at what happens when a few IPOs, right, do whatever they're supposed to do. So Lenskart is going public, of course. It has grown viral. So I don't know if you watched on Twitter, but there was an interview with Mr. Piyush Bansal, right, of a journalist, of a finance journalist, and it really led to a lot of problems. People came out, it was just amazing, whatever. It was just hilarious, out of the blue, right? And Boat, by the way, has reduced its public size. So earlier it was looking at raising, I guess, 2,000 crores. Now the issue size has been reduced to 1,500 crores. So some sanity needs to be present when it comes to the IPO market. I have sort of grown wary of this whole situation, how these people are pouring in as far as the whole IPO play is considered. I've gotten a bit scared about this whole situation now, looking at everything, right? Usually what happens is when something new gets introduced, right? There is a lot of euphoria in the beginning. There is a lot of bubbling things up, and then sort of it enters a maturity phase, right? Indian IPOs are not really going in that direction. So after Paytm, right, we've had Paytm, right? We've had Ola. So in the startup ecosystem, at least, we wouldn't have wanted to have such a high risk profile from a big IPO, right? Like a $10 billion thing. We didn't expect that. We thought nothing like a Paytm, or at least seemingly a Paytm situation, is not possible. But we got Lenskart, and when it opens, it might just be a very, very awkward situation. Very awkward. Anyway, folks, now everyone on LinkedIn is talking about Lenskart overvaluation. Correct, correct. But we were at least like 3-4 months ahead of everybody. No, in fact, much, much ahead. Like I wrote that, I don't know when did I write it, but it was a long time ago. Anyway, folks, UN, developing nations face $284 billion climate funding gap, cries UN. Does anybody give a shit about UN, folks? Do you give a shit about UN? Right? I don't. And UN is still crying that, oh, we are having a climate funding gap, man. We were supposed to have $300 billion to get funded, but as of now, we've only gotten like $14 billion or something of that sort. Some numbers, folks. So they say in 2023, the actual finance flows to help developing countries in their adaptation needs was just $26 billion, right? While the need is of $300 billion. So probably they haven't gotten the memo that nobody gives a shit about these climate models anymore, right? The $300 billion number that they came out with was based on a model that this is the amount of money that will need to go to fix all the things that are caused by climate. Now, how did they calculate that? That was obviously a black box, and it was not funny. So people were really coming in, and now after 20 years of shilling of climate change disasters and climate doom, even Bill Gates, the biggest patron of this whole thing, has sort of turned away from it, right? So we've discussed this, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would know. Mr. Bill Gates has totally turned away from the whole climate doomsday predictions and so on and so forth. The world is not gonna end because of climate change, he says, right? So what happens to UN's funding now on climate? What do you think will happen to UN's funding on climate change, right? Do you think climate based money will keep flowing into UN, uh, if not from Bill Gates, from somebody else? What do you think? What do you think? Are they going to cope with the reduced interest in climate funding? What do you think, folks? So I have an answer to that. They quietly fade, right? They won't make a huge fuss about it. So they're writing it now. In a few days, you're reading that, oh, we need a lot of money. We need $300 billion to solve the climate problem. We need this much money. We need that much money. We need to park these money in these many endeavors and, adventures and so on and so forth. But once that money starts drying up, right? They're going to quickly and quietly fade into oblivion. And you will never get to know who were the people who were actually mobilizing that money in the first place for themselves. They'll just quickly shut up, right? Earlier, earlier, it was science. It was science which said climate change is gonna lead to, the world's end. It's gonna kill people, sea level rise. It was science which told us that climate change is the biggest problem, human led climate change is the biggest problem, and for that we need to solve through a lot of money. It was scientists, all the scientists all over the world, since they had done studies, peer reviewed, and so on and so forth, right? We were nobody to question any of that. But once the money stops flowing in for those guys, they're just gonna stop talking about the science. They just quickly and quietly fade away. All that science, folks, it's gonna go. It's gonna go. That's how science works, if you know what I mean. So the real science is moving the money, folks. That's the real science, right? Whatever moves the money, that's what moves the science. Moving on. And it's gonna happen very quickly, by the way. It's not gonna take a lot of time for that, right? It's not gonna take a lot of time for that. So 21 billion and counting, CPPIB, that's Canada's pension play, right? India's game moving at a faster check. So they are basically looking at investing, keeping up with their investments in India, right? We've talked a lot about drug companies forging data for approval, right? Mislabeling brands to be barred. Well, of course they should be barred. If they are fudging data for approval, right, they should be barred. Why is this in news? It is in news because our regulatory system has been so lax and so inadequate in dealing with the whole pharma play that even small and obvious activities sound like developments, right? So this shouldn't be news. Government drug companies forging data for approval to be barred. What? So they weren't barred before? Is that what you're saying? That companies were fudging data and they were not barred? Come on, man. Come on. Anyway, moving on, folks. There's a lot of travel rise, the year-end holiday planning. Moving on. Niti proposes IP, tech push to boost manufacturing sector. Again, one of the most generic cliched advice. When you're manufacturing, focus on high-tech manufacturing. Focus on intellectual property-led manufacturing. Just don't focus on volumes. Focus on value addition. Focus on creating differentiation and so on and so forth. So these are some recommendations that have been proposed by Niti Aayog, right? As a part of the 10-year roadmap. Well, nothing new. Speaking of what's new, Mr. Weber Manocha says the AQI is really bad today. Wear mask, guys. Well, you're right, Mr. Manocha. The AQI is really getting screwed, which is a very, very big problem. But anyway, we were talking about what's new. What's new is the whole push on the maritime play. That's new. Coastal growth and blue economy priority for 25 years, says Mr. Modi. So he's talking about a lot of action when it comes to maritime play. JM Baxi eyes 13,000 crore in maritime expansion. So a lot of companies are looking at more capex, a lot of action when it comes to maritime investments. As we know, shipbuilding is the mother of all heavy engineering, and that particular play is going to lead to a lot of mushrooming industries, right? Desi shipbuilders plan to augment local sourcing key of core components. So it's also going to lead to a revolution in the small business paradigm, right? Small business paradigm is going to also get helped with the shipbuilding play. How? Because there's a lot of components that these people have to source, and right now almost none of them get made in India. And some small factories are going to start doing that as well. So the second order effects of shipbuilding are going to be amazing, and it's just the beginning of a very very big industry which doesn't essentially exist in the country. Mr. Sumant Kumar says, I read L&T is going to enter electronics component manufacturing. We talked about this. We talked about this today in earlier segment, and we also talked about it yesterday or day before. So we've talked about this, Mr. Sumant Kumar, a lot of times in fact. Moving on, we discussed L&T's financials just now. I mean, we, you know, had this. Global commodity prices have come to a 6-year low, folks. Inflation is not a problem, at least right now. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Meaty is in final talks to list DLI, Design-Led Incentives 2.0 products for launch, end of year. So DLI, there's PLI, production-linked incentives. That's the volume play when it comes to manufacturing, smartphones, electronic components. Then there's design-led incentives, right? When you're trying to incentivize not just manufacturing the volume, but also the design IP play, right? Design-led incentives. Then there's ELI. So there's PLI, there's DLI, there's ELI. ELI is employment-linked incentives, the number of jobs that you create. These are the three Lilly schemes. Let's call them Lilly schemes, right? ELI, PLI, DLI, right? They are doing it. Center mapping domestic demand and trade value chain for 30 consumer electronics products. So that's going on. It's very, very interesting. Moving on, folks. We must look beyond big ticket listings to small caps going public. That is obvious. Cognizant's Q3 reports came out. Net profits drips 53% on tax outgo, ups guidance. Q3 revenue rises 7.4% to 5.42 billion, beating firm's own expectations. Cognizant numbers not so bad, despite everything, right? Happiest Minds is another company in that domain. By the way, Happiest Minds was founded by Mr. Ashok Soota. Ashok Soota, sir, was the founder of Mindtree, right? He was pushed out of Mindtree. It was a boardroom showdown kind of a situation. That's when he started Happiest Minds. Happiest Minds also quarterly profit up 9%. It's a smaller player in the IT play. And what did I tell you about smaller players in the IT play? They're going to benefit as the big guys struggle. PB Infotech's net profit up 136 crores in Q2, right? Jump in consolidated net driven by a rise in insurance premiums. Revenue grew 38%. So insurance Policy Bazaar has really done well despite an overhang of a risk on Policy Bazaar. So you know the Policy Bazaar risk, right? We've talked about what is the risk of Policy Bazaar right now. We've talked about this, folks. We've had good discussions on it. So let's confirm whether we remember that. What are the risks on Policy Bazaar right now? It has something to do with the new regime. We've talked about this. Come on. Ixigo's second quarter revenue has come up, by the way, 37% up. Ixigo has done fairly well. It led a small IPO. GSD disbalance, says Mr. Tushar Tiwari. You're correct, Mr. Tiwari. So that is the overhang on Policy Bazaar, how that's going to affect its affiliate marketing commissions essentially. But for now, the company has done well. That's going to kick in the next quarter. So not going to be nice. But with that out of the way, let's move on. So we've talked about, yeah. So that's what we have. That's what I have for you today, ladies and gentlemen. Right? We come to the end of the 157th episode of Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis, which don't lead to paralysis, right? Before we punch in, right? It's 9:12. we're gonna punch in anytime soon. I wish you a beautiful day personally and professionally. And I'll see you tomorrow, same place, same time, hopefully. I need to thank Mr. Piyush Sethi for being a patron, for supporting this. Guys, tomorrow is when we wind up, 31st October. From November onwards, we want to do the TV thing, right? We want to have that StreamYard play sorted. We want to have that intern making short videos and everything. So go on, donate something if you want this to continue and grow, right? So Mr. Piyush Sethi, thank you so much. Mr. Ashutosh Bhandekar, Mr. Manjunath Madhabul, Mr. Tushar Tiwari, Mr. Abhishek Sharma, Mr. Vaibhav Manocha, Mr. Sumant Kumar, of course, you are a very big patron right now, Mr. Sumant Kumar. Thank you so much for that. And everybody else who joined. Have a nice day and see you tomorrow. Bye bye.